And we are joined by Oklahoma defensive coordinator and safeties coach Alex Grinch. Thanks, Coach, for joining us. We're going to hop right into the questions, and we'll start with Ryan Aber of the Oklahoman. Ryan?
Hey, Alex. Thanks for doing this. What's it been like getting back out there and preparing for this season with all of the uncertainties that there are right now, even still lingering?
I think minus the uncertainty, just the and not to sound too euphoric about it, but just the sheer joy, I think, by players and coaches alike. Now going back, a couple weeks, but there is a reason why you chose to be a football coach, and it was to actually be on the field with the guys and coaching the game. There's also a reason that these guys chose to be football players and come to a place like in Oklahoma is so just the excitement level. I mean, and sometimes you got to curb it a little bit. You can't practice, obviously legally more than a couple hours a day. And then those initial phases just on the field with them for an hour. But that just, I guess in some ways, like maybe anything else is time away kind of gives you an opportunity to really realize how much you maybe miss it or maybe how much you enjoy it. So from that standpoint, it's been really good. I mean, the chief difference, as you mentioned, is just the uncertainty. So much of what we do is so calendar based, very, very rigid that way. In terms of what the winter program looks like, spring football, and that's how 2020 started for us. And we get one spring practice in, and all of a sudden we didn't see the guys again until July. And then you kind of have a plan in place. At that point, what we called our OTA phase, and then into fall camp, again, a plan in place. And I just had to juggle things along the way, as information, kind of came forward and discussions. But I will say this, all those discussions and all that information, for the most part, happen outside the building. And so, for us, getting on the field with the guys and practices, with the addition of wearing a mask and we attack the opportunity every day to get better and all those things. So maybe a little bit in some ways more normal than you think. But certainly there's a little bit of cloud over everything.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, we'll go to Eric Bailey of the Tulsa World, and then Joe Bettner. Eric?
Hey, Alex, thanks a lot for doing this today. I just wanted to ask you, with Caleb Kelly out and Perkins' status not really publicly announced yet and Harrington missing, do you often wonder what coaching a full team would be like? Because you really haven't had that opportunity in 2 seasons. And then also just the way Caleb has handled the situation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think and it's interesting you mentioned that, because I mean, they're when you think back to last year, and we had 5 ACLs on defense and some other stuff, including injuries as the year went on, and obviously the mentality is always next man up, and you don't sit there and wallow in grief as to who's not out there and all those things, because it's the responsible thing to do, because ultimately no one cares. The world doesn't care, what you're lacking. It's still a results business and all those things. And so I think a lot of times, once you're in the moment, you kind of just stay in the moment because you don't have time to maybe worry too much about it. But in looking back, you're right. Our depth chart has not lasted a day. In two seasons now here at Oklahoma, and that's just the reality of what we're in. And then certainly an additional reality, obviously, this year with the virus and that. But specific to Caleb, obviously sick to your stomach for him. For him to have to go through that 2 years in a row, no one deserves that. But if anyone was going to have to deal with it, someone with the mental fortitude that he has, just the full respect from this coaching staff and then these players, and it is probably given too much credit to an individual, but the minute it happens to him, you just know he's going to attack it, and he's going to be back better than ever. You just know that. And one, because you've seen it with your own 2 eyes. And I think in a lot of ways, and I don't want to speak for Caleb, but I think in a lot of ways, I think his approach was the same way. I've been here before. I know I can do it. the odds were certainly in favor of this not happening again, but here we are. And so in any event, still sick for him. But the good thing is, just who he is and what he is and those things. I know he'll attack his recovery.
Thanks, Alex.
Okay, we'll go to Joe Bettner, the Norman Transcript, and then Jason Kersey.
Alex, I'm wondering, considering the uncertainty you guys face on a daily basis, I mean, could you speak to the morale and kind of the leadership you've seen from these guys and what that kind of looked like through the first few weeks of practice?
You know what? It's been really good, and I think are there some tough days? Certainly there are for these guys, as you can imagine. I mean, they see and hear anything like this is national news, and so and unless they're completely removed from it, which obviously none of us are. There's a meeting, there's a decision, there's stuff, and so I think in light of that. Been very impressed with our guys' ability to maybe put thoughts, opinions, feelings kind of in the back of their minds, at least when it comes to their performance in this building, whether it's in workouts, whether it's in meeting room, on the practice field. I don't see a group that is allowing kind of the outside noise to affect their work on a day-to-day basis. Now, believe me, you can only imagine the stresses and this is unique. So for all these guys that college athletes haven't had to experience, in the national pandemic in quite some time. So I don't want to minimize the things that they're going through, the stresses and all those things. That come with their day-to-day as they go through this. But with that said, I want to give them extreme amounts of credit for the work that is being put in on a day-to-day basis, because we've gotten better work than not as we've gone through fall camp.
Okay, we'll go to Jason Kersey of The Athletic, and then Bob Prisbillo. Jason.
Hey, Alex. We know, and we've heard a lot, so much of your sort of ethos revolves around motivation and mental toughness. Has that been more difficult through all this uncertainty? Have your motivation tactics changed through this?
Well, I've yelled at computer screens more than I ever have in my life, and sometimes feel ridiculous over all the Zooms and the March and the April and the May, the June, but I think it's a tremendous example of why all of those things are critical when you talk about being a big believer in adversity. You kind of believe in the impact that it can have on you in a positive way, or you don't. You really can't just tread water with that thing. You got to decide if it's going to be something that you attack and accept into your life and rally because of it. Eliminate the victim mentality. As you approach things. But probably the biggest uniqueness in this is so often when we talk about, the adversities, a lot of times it's singular events. It's a play, or it's a quarter, or it's a game, or it's a drive, this one is obviously, presented itself as a longer stretch. And so, I think just communicating with the guys that, one of the things we say about adversity is you don't get to choose what it is. And you don't get to choose how long it sticks around. When we use that in the football sense, is say, okay, well, you have the bad possession in the football game. Okay, well, let's go attack adversity. Well, then you have a bad second possession in the football game. Oh, wait, I thought we were going to attack it, and we were just going to, miraculously, not going to have any more issues on that particular day, type of deal. No, sometimes it sticks around a little bit longer. And so how you continue to respond in an appropriate way to get the outcomes that you want. And so we challenge the guys, and all offseason, one of the big motivational tactics that we use, because it's completely accurate, was everything was equated for a few months there in the offseason. You think about all the things that took place is no one got reps. So in that moment, well, man, if I just had a few more reps and this and that, well, no one got reps in our building or anywhere else. no one had access to weight rooms, and so there was a stretch of time like no other time that certainly in our lifetimes where you could say where everything is completely equal across the country for every college football player. And so one of our things with our guys was simply this: if you can't bet on yourself from a workout standpoint and attacking your meetings and getting your field work in on your own, finding a way, whether it's push-ups or whatever you got to do to improve yourself individually, if you can't bet on yourself when all the cards are even, right, then don't expect us to bet on you when you come back into the building. And so, that was a huge thing. And then we got a group of guys coming back defensively that went up on a 225 rep count by 102 reps cumulatively. Right. So they tested in February, and this is credit to Coach Wiley, not because I brought it up to the guys, but he what he was able to do in the time in the off season, plus obviously staying on the guys and being a resource for them through those months that we were away. And then, the constant barrage of us staying on them as the defensive coaching staff, as you said, literally 102 more reps when they come back here in July when we tested. And that's just one example. Obviously there's a lot of others. But the point being is, these guys have to find a way through unique circumstances. And again, so motivation never goes away. It just kind of changes its scope.
Okay, let's go to Bob Prisbillo with Sooner Scoop, and then James Hale. Bob.
Yeah, Alex, you mentioned all those injuries from last year. One of those guys coming back is Trey Norwood. Just sort of wondering how he's been looking, and does he have a clear identity, clear spot for what you want to do in the secondary? Yeah,
and that's hey, remember this guy. Oh, by the way, he was just positioned to be one of the stars on the defense, one of the guys that we were excited about that we didn't have a chance to use last year. And so we'll look at him in several spots over the course of fall camp. I think similar to what he was for us that previous spring, a guy that could play really any 5 spots in the secondary, has some experience at corner. So with Piedmont leaving, looking at some corner reps, but not just circling one spot in terms of the impact that he could have on us defensively. But coming off that injury, full bill of health that way, moving well and all those things. And it's nice to kind of reintroduce ourselves to him. They say John Michael Terry as well. I remember that guy that used to star force type of thing. So but been pleased with Trey.
We'll go to James Hale with KREF, and then Bill Haston. James.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. And thanks, Alex, for doing this with us. Alex, talk about you had a scrimmage yesterday. It's the first time you've had anything like that, in months. How did you feel like the defense did, and who stood out for you maybe yesterday on the defensive side of the ball?
I thought overall it was really good work. I mean, the chief negative that I would circle is I thought that the tackling was very poor, to be expected. But at the same token, we know let's not make excuses, but haven't tackled in 8 months. I mean, that's you say that out loud and you're like, good Lord, what do we expect? And so that's something obviously that we have to attack. And that was something going into it. One of the reasons you do scrimmage is so you get those opportunities for the guys. It's not tag football. But no, I thought overall, it was similar to previous days where I thought just when you watch the video, you have an opportunity, you see the defense and you see a brand, you see a defense that guys understanding where they need to be. And you see guys playing it with a tremendous effort. And so probably the best way to describe it, have enjoyed watching the film, right? There's a lot of things we got to get correct. We're nowhere near where we need to be. And obviously like most weeks or, during the season, there was a screenplay yesterday that kept me up last night. And so individual plays that present frustrations, but just in terms of, overall through, it's hard to keep track of the practices this year, but 8-9 days, whatever it's 7-8 days, something like that. Been pleased, and I thought it kind of culminated with a good, about 50 play scrimmage, so about half of football, and got a lot of young guys their first work and all those things. And so, for scrimmage number one, I think you leave there with more positives than negative, and we got to attack those negatives.
Okay, we'll go to Bill Haston with the Tulsa World, and then Brandon Drum. Bill?
Hey, Alex. Apparently Parnell Motley's having a really nice camp with the Bucks, and it goes beyond. It looks like it goes way beyond him just being cap friendly. But he had a big play Monday, and they cut a second round corner, and it looks like he's going to make that roster. Is there anything about him making that roster or playing well so far at that level that surprises you?
Not surprised, not surprised at all. And then through the process, the draft process, and over the course of the year, as coaches, you talk to scouts and those things. And I know, not just the Buccaneers, but several, organizations were impressed with his performance last year. I think in some ways not overly on everybody's radar going into last year, and so I think he's one of those guys that stack some film on top of film as you went through the season. And Coach Manning did a tremendous job with him in a year's time, and positioned himself to get that opportunity. And then my hope for him is that he continues to take advantage of it, because I not knowing his full history before we got here, but understanding that his performance kind of went to another level this past season. And again, credit goes to him, credit goes to Coach Manning in particular. But that, I would like to think his best football continues to be in front of him if he continues to make those strides.
As it pertains to physicality, are you as consistently physical in this camp as you would be in any other year? You know what I mean? Or does that happen more as you get closer to the first game?
I think it's something to be very, very aware of. I think it's something that it continues to be on the mind of coaches as you go through this, making sure that as much work as these guys do on their own, they didn't get a full summer to train, and so some of it is making sure the conditioning level is such. It's one thing they're in condition, okay, but are they conditioned to go through a full practice with the contact and all those things? And so we've only had X number of days in pads, not as many as it almost feels like we should in the amount of times we've been working. And so that's something that's got to continue to get cranked up as we go. I think I would, kind of grade it right now, maybe, average to above average from a physicality standpoint. Again, only the one scrimmage, but something that has to continue to increase as we go.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Brandon dropped off. Let's go to John Hoover with SI Sooners. John?
Okay, got me. Had to unmute there for a second.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, Alex, how does the loss of Caleb Kelly impact what you were hoping to do or maybe had plans for the linebacker group? And are there any of those guys that you could see in that group either playing multiple positions or maybe starting out at one spot and finishing the season somewhere else?
One of the conversations that we've had, even before injury, is just looking at this season from a dual training standpoint, between positions, and not just positions, but also between position groups. An edge guy having to play a defensive tackle spot, for instance, or an edge guy having to be a linebacker. One of the guys we're looking at in the inside linebacker room as opposed to the outside linebacker room is a guy that David Awebu, who played for us a year ago, an outside linebacker, and a pretty good example. And then a lot of that initial conversation that we had stemmed from just simply the fact of dual training guys, because it's going to be a more fluid roster. At least you got to anticipate that as you go through this. And same thing like in the secondary, corner, safety, nickel, corner, so on and so forth. So no, it does change some things. And Brian Asamoah, Deshaun White, got guys that have some experience there. We'll continue. Brian Meade has some experience in that linebacker room as well. And so, no, it's created, obviously some opportunities for some guys. We expect guys, Robert Barnes, who we've transitioned to linebacker, an opportunity there for him to get some reps as well. Shane Witter as a freshman in our program to get additional reps. And so, no, it's a room that it does have some experience. Obviously, removing Caleb eliminates some of that. But I think it's a fairly athletic group and one that really shows an understanding of the defense and going into year two, even maybe some of the inexperienced guys.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Brandon Drum with OU Insider and then Kerry Murdoch. Brandon?
Hey, Alex. About, I guess, Deshaun White, I know you talked about the linebackers just now, but how has he kind of evolved as a leader in the absence of Kenneth Murray, because he was so vocal last year for you guys. And if he hasn't, who has become that vocal leader that you have seen, I guess, in the early portions of practice?
Yeah, and I think that's also because of the way the calendar went. I mean, those leadership opportunities that would have presented themselves in spring and summer workouts, and then a lot of times by fall you kind of have a better picture of that as opposed to this year and all the time spent away. But I think Deshaun has done a nice job. I mean, more leader by example, but that example is getting more. In the category of a high-end player as opposed to a guy just doing his job. The experience in some of the guys coming back in the secondary, leader by example, and Trey Brown. A year ago, he wasn't a leader by example. He had his good days, but he was too willing to have a bad day. And then I would tell Trey, and I think Trey would tell you the same thing. And I'm not just talking about during the season. I'm talking about in a fall camp and those things. But all of a sudden you're seeing, a guy with just a work ethic and a want to every single rep of practice. And so I highlight him simply by example. It's not the vocal side of things, but that's as critical as anything. Perkins certainly is for us, a guy that's been in the fire, a guy that's, was in my opinion, one of the better defensive linemen, specifically in this conference, as a guy that can be one of the better ones in this country moving forward. Again, that has the respect of his teammates. Pat Fields in the secondary has experienced more vocal, coming back as a 14-game starter a year ago. So I kind of highlight some of those guys, but kind of moving forward through this is, Kenneth Murray had a voice because he had film. It's one to be the alpha, but you got to make sure you're performing at a high level to really get the impact. You can lead and not play well, then it's going to be hard for anybody to follow you, type of thing. And so, I've been pleased with. There's more example on film, I guess. I'm probably going on a tangent right now, but there's more examples of who we are and what we are as I watch practice, and then certainly a year ago, right? And so, like, these young guys coming in, you miss the vocal guy in a Kenneth Murray that says, okay, this is how we want to do things. But their visual is so much better than it would have been, at this time a year ago, because, you're seeing, again, a Trey Brown playing at an elite level, this guy, and say, okay, this is how we do things at Oklahoma.
Okay, let's go to Kerry Murdoch with Sooner Scoop and the Sports Animal, and then Garen Emig. Kerry? Kerry, I don't know if you're trying to talk, but you're muted if you are.
God, I can't operate a computer. Alex, could you tell us a little bit about kind of how your defensive line is shaping out, and specifically a guy like Perion Winfrey and all guys that are newcomers, how difficult this kind of is on them with this kind of window towards preparing to play?
Yeah, no, been pleased with our time with Perion. I mean, some of these guys you talk about where you would have had, this opportunity to work with them in spring football. He was here in spring. Josh Ellison was here in spring. Bryson Washington was here in spring. Shane Witter was here in spring, and then they just immediately get lumped into first day guys when fall camp rolls around. And so it's a crash course. Coach Tibbs does a tremendous job with those guys. I've been very pleased with where they've been at from a mental standpoint. You mentioned Perion, but just in including all kind of the first year guys, which speaks to taking advantage of all those Zoom meetings, that become monotonous, but taking advantage of those, and then the walkthroughs, we call them run throughs, because we want to do so at tempo, but taking advantage of the run through reps, and then showing well when we've gotten to the practice field. So I would suggest after X number of days here now that we're further ahead from a mental standpoint than specifically those first year guys than I would have probably assumed. And again, credit goes to them and the coaches for taking advantage of the time that we did have with them. But no, from a depth standpoint, kind of how that shakes out is, I think in a perfect scenario, which I don't know if we're going to get many perfect scenarios in 2020, but in a perfect scenario, I think we'll have more bodies up front to rotate than we did a year ago. and so that we'll see how that plays out.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay, let's go to Garen Emig of the Tulsa World.
Alex, good to see you again. Given your experience at Ohio State and Washington State, how badly do you feel for the two conferences that had to shut it down? And along the same lines, how fortunate do you feel to be playing and proceeding forward?
Yeah, I think obviously like I mentioned earlier. I mean, there's a reason you get into the profession, because you love the game, you love the coach, and obviously you think about those guys that I think it gets lost sometimes that it almost sounds like guys are required to play football. No, they want to play football. They choose to play football. This is a small window of time over the course of a lifetime that you get to call yourself a football player. And to have that, not have that opportunity can I feel for I certainly think for our opportunity right now is really attacking it on a day-to-day basis. You talk about being present and not looking too far into the future and just worry. And it's all I guess theory or want to in terms of how you react to some of these things and say, okay, just focus on today. And the lines we've used over the years. That is, certainly even more pertinent in the current climate. Is say, like I said several times, I'm a football coach today. You're a football player. For the next 2 hours, guess what? We just opted in, and so let's attack it. And so that's kind of the approach that you take. And so we'll be fortunate to have a team meeting. I know today it's scheduled at 1:45, and I can't wait to. And then have a position meeting after that, and be excited to experience that. And right now there's a practice tomorrow schedule, and so you kind of just keep that singular focus, which has always been the best approach. Obviously now certainly more than ever.
Coach, we've got a couple more here, but I want to be mindful of your time. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah, I got a couple more.
Okay. All right, let's go to Keegan Renault with Sooners Wire.
Thanks, Alex and Mike, for putting this together. I know one play doesn't define a season or a career, but with what happened with Buki in the Peach Bowl, are you happy with how he's responded this offseason, and how has he looked so far in camp for you?
Yeah, no. One play doesn't define it, but it's a play that shouldn't happen, can't happen, and all those things. And then that is something obviously like anything you got to move on from. But I've been very pleased. One of the challenges to our guys as well is we told these guys we don't want to coach the same dudes we coached in 2019. Don't ask us to coach the same guy. So if you come back here with any of the same issues or any of the the same flaws, then obviously and again the year being the year, you haven't taken advantage of your time. Away, you haven't taken advantage of the meetings. You haven't taken advantage of the walkthroughs and our time together once we got back together. And so he's one of those guys that I would highlight as I see a different guy. Now he's got to continue to do it, but I see a different guy. I don't see some of the same issues. I see a more productive player. I see more commitment to technique. And there's several guys that again we kind of kept. And we continue to, okay, what can you do this year that at this moment in time last year you couldn't do? And the answer is I'm the same guy, then we've all failed, right? And so, I highlight him. I mean, he's practicing at a different level, okay? I highlight Pat Fields practicing at a different level. Brian Asamoah practicing at a different level. Ronnie Perkins practicing at a different level. Deshaun White practicing at a different level. Nick Bonito practicing at a different. I mentioned Trey Brown practicing at a different level. And so that's the idea. I mean, that's the expectation. It's something that has to happen for us to be anywhere close to being the defense that we want to be. And that final game is a nice reminder that's sticking right into our face. That's saying we got a long way to go.
Okay, we're going to go to Lee Benson with Channel 9 in OKC. Lee?
Hey, Coach. I was going to ask you about specifically your defensive line. I know you talked about them already, but when it comes to the other side of the ball, talented offensive linemen, just can you quantify the importance it is for your group to go up against players like specifically Creed Humphrey, who's started a lot there, has NFL aspirations. Is it possible to quantify just seeing those kind of guys every day in practice? What does that do for your unit?
Well, I think if used the right way, it can be a incredible opportunity. You talk about a guy like a Barry Winfrey coming in from junior college, and you put him on the interior defensive line, and all of a sudden he's going against a high-level guy in Creed. I mean, you're right. That gives you a little bit more of a barometer than obviously going think about scout team work or something along those lines. I think if it's handled right, I think across the board. I mean, you think about the receivers that we have a chance to go against on a day-to-day basis, and the scheme we get a chance to go against on a day-to-day basis. If handled the right way, I think it's a tremendous advantage for us defensively. Now, if their successes turn into our excuses, then all of a sudden, we're going down the dark path pretty quickly. But sometimes I think we need to give ourselves more credit, for our ability to for instance, some of the things our guys do on offense that we got to defend on a day-to-day basis. They run it better than some of our opponents. Now, why on earth can we go then play an opponent that appears like they have more success on that particular that play or that scheme against us than our own offense does? You say, well, wait a second. Why is it, why are we not able to maybe transition it as well as we need to into a game day? So anyway, it's something that we need to take advantage of. With our defensive front, and I think again, when you have high-level guys on the other side, you get a better barometer as to where you're at.
Okay, and Coach, our last one will be Joey Helmer with OU Insider. Joey?
Yeah, Alex, you talked about Owigbu moving inside. Can you talk about just his development that you've seen here in the first few days of camp, and also dating back to, I guess, the one practice in spring?
Yeah, so in David's case, he was a rotational guy for us. We had John Michael Terry, we had Nick Benito at rush linebacker a year ago. And David was kind of the young freshman that we wanted to get work in. And then when John Michael went out, all of a sudden, roles changed. And I thought David did a good job for us. I think both him and Nick at that rush linebacker spot. We need more production there, but one was a true freshman, the other one was a redshirt freshman. And again, their roles were, kind of, put into fast forward as we went through that thing. And so just kind of as we looked at the offseason, just, you're always trying to look at what's your best 11, and trying to position guys where you think maybe they could be most successful, one, and ultimately combine that with what makes sure your defense most successful. And he was just a name that kept coming up as a guy that we just thought has a little bit more, position flexibility. He was willing to make the move, and the idea being at any moment we could move him back to rush linebacker. Obviously, with Caleb's situation, it lends itself to getting him even more work at the position. And then so it's something that we continue to evaluate. But I've been extremely pleased with his progress. Coach Odom does a great job with the linebackers, but just in a short period of time, it's funny, we had a conversation the other day, and he's frustrated because he doesn't know it as well as he thinks he should know. And we're looking at it from a coaching standpoint, like, oh my God, I can't believe you got this far in this many days. And so that also speaks to obviously, the expectations that he has. And so, no, a guy we're excited about in the program and in any position, but we may have found a good spot for him.